Welcome back to another sports preview. I'm Andy Hewling, joined by Delaney Barrow. We're going to get into this week's action as there's a lot of sports coming back into play this year, and that would be softball and baseball this weekend, opening up their homestands here. But softball obviously started last night, and the Tigers were unable to win their game at home, and that was the first time that they lost in 22 years at home. So not a great start for the Tigers, but Delaney, you were there last night. What can they improve on?
I think that their defense was lacking last night. There were a few errors, 3, that caused 3 unearned runs by Kennesaw. And there were some interesting rotations in the roster in the lineup. Alyssa Rivera, who was named one of America Softball's top 100 collegiate athletes, actually was not a starter. She only served as a pinch hitter last night. So that was interesting. But I think that the team is really just looking to bounce back today as they face UNC Wilmington.
Yeah, so the Tigers have played a lot of games last weekend and then this weekend, so they'll have chances to get going. You talked about Rivera not starting. Do you think that that's something that the coaches chose, or was it? Is there any word at all about like that situation?
Coach Mickey Dean, after the game in his press conference, he was just talking about how they're trying new things out for the roster, doing a couple new rotations. There are 13 newcomers on the team, with 9 of them being freshmen. So I know that there's lots of opportunity for new potential, and I think he's just trying to experiment and see where his team can reach their max potential.
Okay, so yeah, it'll be interesting to see where softball goes from here. Hopefully they'll get on the right track in these upcoming games over this weekend. Now, obviously, baseball being one of the big talking points this weekend, the 10th ranked Tigers come in to Plainsman Park to face Illinois Chicago in their first series back since the trip to Omaha last summer. The Tigers, I've added Tim Hudson as the pitching assistant coach, and they still have Gabe Gross and Coach Butch Thompson. So you've got a really solid squad of coaches. And then they had a really good recruiting class, top 10 this year, according to Baseball America. So the Tigers are really moving in a upward slope right now. So what do you think we're going to expect from baseball this year?
I think we can expect a lot from them. They have lots of returners, and they also have, like you said, that great new recruiting class. And I think that because they have so many returners, including star pitcher Tanner Burns, who is expected to start his first home opener, I think that teams will already be looking to knock them off because they have that potential to make a deep run again this year.
Well, first pitch will be at 5 o'clock tonight, and it will be really good to see baseball back. And then also later on tonight is a big meet for gymnastics as Auburn takes on the Florida Gators, who are one of the best teams in the country, ranked 2nd. And it's going to be a really exciting a matchup in Auburn Arena. How does Auburn get back to winning ways and even upset Florida, because they didn't have a solid performance against Kentucky? Some mistakes, a lot of slips, and just things that they really didn't want to see against the Wildcats. How does Auburn get a big win?
Well, like you said, those mistakes last week, it just seemed like an overall uncharacteristic performance compared to their earlier season meets. And in order to beat number 2 undefeated Florida, they're going to have to fix those mistakes. I know there are a few rotations that were made to the lineups, but last week they did have season high on the vault, and they had 3 really strong floor performances. So I think that if they can just put it all together and fix those small mistakes and those very costly ones, I think that they will have a good chance to get close to Florida.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one thing I noticed was the fact that some of the seniors, some of the experienced leaders fell, like Drew Watson fell off the bars, and Emma Slappy fell off the beam as well. How does Auburn keep the mistakes away, and because they're going to have to be pretty much perfect, because Florida's not going to mess up. They're not going to fade away because they're an experienced team. How does Auburn just keep a perfect performance?
Well, like with any sport that plays in the arena, I think the crowd plays a huge role, and they're definitely going to be looking to feed off those cheers in the audience tonight. And also the fact that earlier in the season, they had to travel a lot in between their meets. But this week, they got to stay home and rest a little bit. And so I think that they use that extra time to recover and just really build up and fix on what they made mistakes on last week.
For sure. So, yeah, it will be a really exciting matchup tonight. So that will be at 7:30, and it will be also on SEC Network. So it will be a big time for Auburn Gymnastics as they look to get back on winning ways in the SEC. Now, obviously, Missouri-Auburn being the big matchup for basketball as the Tigers go on the road to Columbia to face a Missouri team that's maybe their record doesn't show exactly how good they are because they've given a lot of teams fits like Florida. They even were up at LSU just this past Wednesday. They had a 10-point lead at one point against the Tigers. So they have the abilities to really give Auburn fits. And how does Auburn, especially after this performance and even the last 3 games where it's been really close, overtimes, how does Auburn play consistent on the road?
Well, their performance on Wednesday was one of the best starts that they've seen all season. They went up on that 16-0 run. 8 of those points came from Anthony McLemore, who was starting in place of D'Angelo Purifoy as he was battling the flu. But I think that if they can just build on that performance, they've already proved that they're clutch in overtime when that pressure is real, and they have put in the hard work, and I think that they're very confident in their skills, and they're only going up from here.
Yeah, and Dowdy in the press conference, he credited their ability to win in overtime to the conditioning that they've done to really prepare for these environments and these tough tests that teams bring in. Because the SEC is not easy. I think we know that teams are going to bring their best in this league because you're starting to see this conference really evolve where there's a lot of teams that can beat each other on any given night because they have that quality. But I think one thing I'd like to see from Auburn is just have them finish games, especially that 16-0 run where it looked like the game might be getting out of hand, but Alabama was able to hit so many three-pointers, SEC record amount of shots, but also they hit 22 of them out of 59. And obviously you missed 37, which doesn't help you at all, but hitting 22 is still a big stat. Do you feel like Alabama had even really had a game plan at all for that, or was it just kind of catch, shoot, three?
I think it was a lot of catch, shoot, three, but there was so much on the line between that game. It was a revenge matchup between the two teams, obviously bragging rights for the Iron Bowl of basketball. So I think they were really just doing anything they could to put those extra points on the board.
Yeah, and when you have John Petty and Kyra Lewis Jr. and Jaden Shackelford, Jaden Shackelford actually scored 28 points, and some of that was off of 7 three-pointers that he made. So he was really a factor in that. But John Petty's ability to shoot from three, I think we all know that he's the leader in that. He hit a clutch shot to tie the game to go to OT. So Alabama did give Auburn fits, and I think it was really the scheming that Auburn had because they played a lot of zone, and that it helps as far as covering the basket. But when you're playing zone out, it's really hard to cover the three, and I think Alabama was really able to take advantage of that because the Auburn team was running a lot of picks and having to, they're moving the ball around is really hard for them. But let's go back into the Missouri game. Obviously, Auburn's now not going to have Isaac Okoro. Most likely will not play tomorrow. There's even an Instagram video from one of his teammates with him with one crutch on his right side because of his hamstring pull that he suffered against Alabama. And then obviously you said D'Angelo Purifoy is still suffering from the flu, and he played a little bit against Alabama, but he was not effective at all. Do you see a little fatigue from Auburn?
I think that season is definitely wearing on them, but like Smee was saying, with their endurance, hopefully they can just continue to fight through this and carry through. And so McLemore will most likely be starting again, depending on how Purifoy is feeling tomorrow. He might fill in Isaac's spot. It just depends, but I think that the Tigers have rotated a decent amount this season, and so they are not necessarily used to the new lineups, but they'll be able to catch up to speed very fast.
Yeah, and to have a healthy D'Angelo Purifoy, I think would be big because McLemore, I don't think can do it all on his own because he would have to play a lot more than he usually does. Not saying that he can't do it. I think he has tons of talent, but to have D'Angelo Purifoy to come in and help him out would be huge. Okoro, do you have any concern for Okoro being out? Do you think it's going to hurt Auburn, or do you think they'll be just fine?
I think there's definitely a chance his injury could hurt Auburn, but at this point, the most important thing to the team is just getting to that conference championship and that tournament. And I think that they're smart enough to know that that's the priority and to take things slow if needed now in order to be better in the long run overall.
Yeah, and I think also the fact that they're playing some favorable matchups. Obviously, it's not going to be easy at all because you've got to go to Missouri, to Georgia, and then you have Tennessee back at home. But I think to have Okoro out, it's going to be maybe 1 to 2 weeks. It's still some favorable matchups for Auburn, but they're going to have to play well, and I think that's expected of them. It's what Coach Pearl expects and the Auburn fan base, that they perform up to their expectations. So it will be really interesting to see what happens over this weekend. Thank you for joining us for another sports preview. And once again, I'm Andy Hewing, joined by Delaney Bureau, and we'll see you next week.